Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur Podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined once again by our good friend Mitch Lovell of the Video Vacuum. Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you, Matt.
Absolutely, and also a published author as well. I know. So your most recent book, right, is The Bloody Book of Horror.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the best thing is to, for your books, I think it's just to look up Mitch Lovell with 2 L's at the end. And you can kind of see all your books are there. I think we have them all listed on our site as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's right on Amazon. They're basically just quick bite reviews of I've done one on horror, one on action, one on all the Expendables. So if anybody likes my writings on the website, they're more than welcome to buy a few books and stoke my ego a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I know for me, obviously I've known you, as us doing, our own sites and whatnot for a while, but it always astounds me. A lot of times I will just be, looking up movies on IMDb, like, oh, do I want to review this movie or not? And I'll see in the critic reviews, a lot of times Video Vacuum will be there. So I think for people, if you're going through the critic reviews, I think it's always a good thing to just, if you're thinking about a movie, to try that out. But, you're see the Video Vacuum in there. Yeah, I think that the books are a great thing to sort of go from there if you're someone who's been seeing those reviews.
Yeah, I mean, when we both started, I mean, usually the IMDb review page, that was the only way to get kind of the word out on our blogs there. So that was always good. And, when you're at it, as long as we both have, you amass quite a library of reviews on there.
Yeah. I think you, me, and Ty and Brett from Comeuppets, I think we've covered a huge number of what's out there in the sort of the B direct-to-video movie spectrum.
Yeah, I mean it's good company.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the topic that we have today is one that I think you're a little bit more qualified to speak on. You've been into these movies, or you kind of know these movies a little bit better than me. But I think one of the things for me is that these were the kind of movies that got me into doing direct-to-video, and the fact that I'm over 1,000, reviews on my site and I haven't reviewed a single one of these movies is kind of a real travesty on my part, something that I need to rectify. But, I think when we conceived the idea of this, it was back in December. We were thinking, okay, let's do, and just to give people the idea, our topic today, we're looking at the movie Dallas Connection, Andy Sidaris film, and we were talking about that idea of, doing it Sidaris, but also, talking about Julie Strain, and then it ended up, she ended up passing away in the meantime between when we first conceived of this and then we talked about actually doing the episode. So this is going to be part, a celebration of Sidaris films, but also a celebration of Julie Strain.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, you can't have one without the other, at least for like the latter era of Andy's films. I mean, she was always such a memorable presence, and she always elevated whatever movie she was in, whether it was, kind of having small roles in like Seagal movies or, even like making cameos in Naked Gun. She always elevated the material that she was in, just because there's only a one of a kind presence like Julie. You only luck into them, once every 50 years. I think you have to go back to maybe Tura Satana from Faster Pussycat Kill Kill to find like somebody that has that combination of sexy dominatrix, very capable in the action scenes, very much a presence in every scene that she's in.
Yeah, and that for me, I think it's talking about being a travesty that I haven't covered more films. I mean, I think I've only done a couple Julie Strains, and when word first came out last year that she had passed, and it turned out that wasn't the case, that she hadn't, I was like, well, what am I going to do to sort of honor her, kind of in memorial post? And I realized that I think like Busted, the Corey Feldman cop got comedy, was like the only one I had reviewed, which was crazy. And the other thing too is, I was looking at who was in my Hall of Fame, and I'm like, oh, Cynthia Rothrock's the only woman in the Hall of Fame. I mean, who would be another woman that I could add to the Hall of Fame? And I thought, well, Pam Grier would be one, but then I look and she doesn't have a lot of direct-to-video movies. She does a lot of, TV stuff in the 80s and 90s after, having, been, kind of the queen of cinema in the 70s like that. And I was like, well, who should it be? And it's like, here's Julie Strain standing there the whole time telling me like, she's had that kind of B movie direct to video career that is worthy of being in the Hall of Fame with a lot of the people that we talk about all the time.
Well, definitely. I mean, and also, I mean, she definitely has kind of very like noticeable eras of her career, like, just like the like I said, in the early going, getting bit parts in B movies and action movies, to kind of finding her footing and finding her brand, and finding directors like Andy Sidaris and Jim Wynorski who know how to properly build a vehicle around her, and where she's not just a kind of the bad guy's arm candy or something, and really take advantage of what she brings. And then in the later movies, like kind of doing it more like Trauma kind of, bit parts and Friends movies. And, I think, there's a lot to choose from in that kind of filmography.
Yeah, I mean, one that I had forgotten about that she did was on, I think it was on HBO, right? That kind of like that fake court show where she would like hand down these like quirky sex sentences on couples that were having some kind of dispute that they would bring to her, almost like an X-rated people's court or something like that. Sex court, yes. And I had forgotten about that show, and I remember watching that. Things like that sometimes they weren't things I necessarily would seek out. Just sort of flip through the channels and like, oh, what is this? This looks cool, and start watching it.
And again, that's a vehicle that really kind of is tailored to her strengths. That kind of like, you could actually see, like, if you were trapped on like a desert island or something, or, like she would be the Amazon goddess presiding over something like that, like this like kind of ritualistic kind of Judge Judy meets Playboy Channel kind of, thing.
Yeah, and the one thing I kind of love about her roles when we see her in movies is that she knows how to have fun with it, and in a way that is like kind of just sort of naturally works with the film. So it's not like she's making fun of the movie she's doing, but she's also getting that point of like, not taking herself too seriously and having fun with it, that I think it enhances a lot of the roles that she does. Because I think for the B movie watcher, we're there having fun with it. And whoever it is, whether it's Dolph, who sometimes gets what we're looking for, or those kind of actors that sort of get what we're coming to that movie for, I think it enhances it. It kind of makes it more enjoyable for us.
Oh, definitely. I mean, like her very first scene where she offers the guy chocolates and she's like, "They're to die for," and shoots him, with a gun hidden in the candy box. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about. She's in on the joke, but she's not making it a joke.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I chose Dallas Connection, I think, just looking at the whole span of those Andy Sidaris Lethal Ladies films, I almost feel like Dallas Connection for me is like it's not like one of the best, but it feels like, for me, it was at least my favorite Julie Strain of those ones, where it seemed like she could really just be all of the things that we like about Julie Strain in that film.
Well, yeah, very much so. I mean, I think my favorite moment of hers in those films, though, is from Fit to Kill when she's having sex on the boat, and at the moment of climax, she says, "Anchors away." Uh, I think that's my favorite moment. But you're right. I mean, Dallas Connection kind of typifies everything that we love about those movies. And even though it's directed by his son Drew, and some of like the hallmark traits aren't there, like being set in Hawaii, them flying around in a cargo plane, but it kind of I I think Drew found his own like kind of like niche, the way to kind of like separate himself from his dad by like setting it in Dallas and then giving us country line dancing.
Right.
And it's one of those things too. I mean, like Andy is one of those guys who, you go back to whole history of exploitation. They look around at what they have at their disposal, and they build that movie around what they have. They have a jacuzzi. Okay, we'll put the girls in the jacuzzi at the end. We have a strip club. Okay, we'll have the girls work out of the strip club. We have an inn with Playboy Channel. Okay, we'll get some bunnies to star in our movies. So I know a guy who can get a good deal on radio controlled cars and helicopters. Great, bring him up. We'll put that in the movie. So it's just a joy to see all that kind of come together.
Yeah, and I almost think too, when we think of that mindset, it's almost how Julie Strain becomes sort of the focal point of the later films, where the very first one, Malibu Express, right? It's Sidaris remaking his movie Stacy with a male figure. Of course, that Abilene, the first Abilene who can't shoot straight, is Cody. And it's almost like then the next one, I can't remember the actor's name, was a soap opera actor that he had be the Abilene in the second one, and that's where we first get Donna Spear in the film. And I think he realizes when he goes from the second to third, and he brings in a third Abilene character who's played by kind of like a poor man's Aidan Quinn. I don't remember exactly who that actor was that played him, but Donna Spear goes from the second to third one. I think Sidaris realized, oh, you know what? Maybe we need, instead of making it be this Abilene character who I can't seem to get one Abilene to play or one actor to play in the same movie back to back times. What if I center it on Donna Spear and have the female be the protagonist? And when that change happens, I think the series starts to really take off a bit too, because now this Abilene character is always the background person, that whoever it's Shane, I think it's the one who takes over, Shane Abilene, and Bruce Penhall starts to be a force in the films as well. But whoever they bring in, Eric Estrada, Donna Spear is the center. She's sort of the main DEA agent. And then when she leaves the series, that's when we get that. I think it's Fit to Kill, right? That's the overlap one, right, with Donna Spear and Julie Strain. I mean, who better to get to take over a series like that than Julie Strain? And you kind of feel it when you watch Fit to Kill, where it's like, wow, this is an amazing upgrade for them to be able to get. Or I don't know if I'd say upgrade, like Donna Spear wasn't doing a good job, but if you're going to lose Donna Spear, I mean, it's like, how often do we watch a series where you replace somebody with somebody new and you get somebody at that level to be able to do it? It kind of gives the series a whole, it kind of just breathes more life into that series where what was Donna Spear? Was that like 9 movies in or something like that, or 7 movies that before she left? So the series is starting to wane a little bit, and now Julie Strain brings in this new element to it.
Well, I think kind of what it is those early movies focused on actresses that came out of Playboy magazine. And what you see in the later ones is that they start to come from Penthouse.
Yeah.
And I think that there's like they both have different kinds of qualities to them. Like in the early ones, like you can see like those ladies, if they went to the bar, they would be drinking a cocktail or sipping champagne, and like girls like Julie K. Smith and Julie Strain, they would be knocking back shots. and I think it's a little tougher, a little bit. I think the girls maybe were a little bit more elegant in the early movies, but the girls in the ladies, they're because they're lethal ladies. I'm sorry, I shouldn't call them girls. They're lethal ladies. They have a different, like a level of toughness. Like they still have that elegant quality, but they could definitely handle themselves when it came to action.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think one of the things I think about these movies is that we think of nudity in a film as being a completely exploitative thing. That it's there's sort of that I don't know if trope is the right word, but there's that sort of that cliche of the sleazy director trying to convince the female star to take off her top in a movie. And with these, even though Sidaris a lot of times will portray a sleazy character when he does his cameos in the film, with these Playboy models that are the actresses, there isn't really that sense of that. These are actresses that are used to taking their clothes off, and when they do it in the film, there's no body double or anything like that. I think it's a different vibe than it would be if it's again like a star actress who maybe has a body double step in and do the nude scene, or that I don't know, it gives these movies, I think, I guess maybe the term I would use for it is like jiggle exploitation as opposed to sexploitation, where it's like these are actresses, they're doing Playboy, and so it's not so unheard of that they would just be topless in a jacuzzi, because they're used to doing that kind of thing. And the other thing I like too is that there's a sort of a mutual attraction with the male characters in the films. So again, it doesn't have the feel of like sleazy guys saying, sexual innuendo jokes to these women. It's these men and women that both mutually find each other attractive. So the sexual innuendo, it's more like a mutual thing as opposed to somebody trying to make somebody uncomfortable, or somebody hitting on somebody who's not really interested in it, which I think is a really nice quality to these that I think allows you to kind of have more fun with them, that you don't have to feel like you're watching something that is exploiting the actors or actresses involved.
A lot of that too has to go with the characters that they're all portraying. They're more capable than the male characters. They're not only equals, they surpass them, because half of the males in the movies can't shoot straight. Right. And they're always there's kind of like this quiet competition between them when they're in the field doing their spy stuff or whatever it is that they're doing, and the ladies almost always best the males. And I think so that they're at a level playing field as well, physically. But I think another thing too is that, like, Sidaris really knows how to photograph them, where it feels almost like a video Playboy centerfold, where it's it's not like the grimy kind of grindhouse drive-in kind of aspect like you were kind of alluding to, where it's kind of like you're leering at them, where it's more of like this is part of the film, and this is a part of the film where they get naked.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, and I think it adds to it, like, just kind of like you said, it's like an overall fun quality. I mean, so just to kind of give people background here, and maybe I should use this point here to kind of put the warning out to everybody that when we're talking about these movies, in particular Dallas Connection, there's going to be a lot of spoilers, because it's not possible for us to talk about them without spoilers. So anybody who's worried about having things given away for them in these movies, maybe pause and come back. All these movies are on Tubi, so that's something to keep in mind. So if you're in the United States, you can stream all of them for free on Tubi, which that's how I recently watched them. So when I knew we were doing this episode, I watched Dallas Connection, and after I saw it, I said, you know what, the weather was bad here in Philadelphia. I'm not going really out anyway, so I thought, why don't I just watch them all? They're all in it. So I started with Malibu Express and just went through all the way till Return to Savage Beach, to kind of just see them all, sort of take them all in, and it was quite a fun experience. I remember watching these thinking, like, wow, like they're you can pick at things, right? You can pick at like, for example, with Dallas Connection that we're going to be talking about, you can pick at areas where the dialogue sounds off, where maybe they could have edited that better, or maybe they could have delivered it better. But overall, like, the plots tend to be a lot of fun. The intrigue in the plots tends to be fun, and the performances tend to be a lot of fun. And there's a good action quotient, or I guess we call it jiggle quotient. Maybe that's the term to use. And so I think we talk about this on here a lot, that the worst thing you can do with a DTV movie, the worst thing you can do for us is bore us. And I don't ever really remember being bored watching these movies.
Well, I mean, from film to film, I mean, there's a consistency that is unrivaled in a 12 film series. I mean, each one is pretty much just as good, if not a little bit better than the last one. And part of that has to do with formula. And, he hit on a formula that kind of worked and ran with it. I mean, Malibu Express, it's a little bit longer than the other ones, and it I wouldn't say it's the worst of the bunch, but he still kind of has one foot in on the drive-in circuit that, like with Stacy and Seven, and he was just kind of doing what came natural. But you're right, by the time, he gets into like Hard Hunted and Hard Ticket to Hawaii, all the pieces really kind of form together. And, it's like the Bond movies. I mean, there's a formula at work, and when it's cooking, there are very few movies that I would want to watch, in a row like you did, than, the Lethal Ladies movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think with when you watch a lot of movies in a row, it didn't feel like a chore. It was like something where I looked forward to it. I was like, okay, I'm going, I'm getting done with work tonight, and I've got an hour and a half or a couple hours free. I'm excited to watch the next movie in the series here. And, the fact that they were all on Tubi, I thought was nice too. Because I think, when I think about these movies and how I sort of came to them, it wasn't really like I was making a conscious decision to watch Sidaris movies. It was almost like, oh, it's, late at night on, I just got back from the bar or whatever in my early 20s. And, I'm watching Roadhouse on TNT, and now the next thing up is a Bruce Penhall, Julie Strain movie, or I'm on, flipping through HBO and I see this movie, that's got Bruce Penhall or something like that. And which in and of itself is funny. I think the fact that I'm, Bruce Penhall is enough of a name for me from his like later years in Chips that I'm saying like, oh, this could be interesting. It's got Bruce Penhall. But it I never really said like, oh, I'm going to watch Andy Sidaris. I think it was like later on where I was like, oh yeah, so, you'd hear that name Andy Sidaris and think like of these movies. But I think now with Tubi, the fact that they're there, just sitting there waiting to be watched, is kind of a cool thing. Because I think in the past with a lot of these movies, you couldn't seek them out. You had to sort of get them as they came. If they were on HBO or USA and they were edited, or TBS and they were edited, now you can actually watch them in all their glory.
Well, it's funny that when I knew we were talking about the subject, I kind of was trying to think back of the first one, and oddly enough, I was probably about 10. And I had cable, and I knew, like, if I don't know if you had cable growing up and you knew the trick where you put the cable channel one higher and the TV one lower, you could get the scrambled effect, and you can sort of make out Playboy Channel through the squiggly lines.
Right. And
people of a certain age will know what I'm talking about.
Right. Well, because remember they also had those illegal boxes that would do the descrambling for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was my first, kind of taste of an Andy Sidaris movie. It was like listening, it's like watching a radio show, and every, couple minutes you might see a boob through the scrambled. But I think the first one I actually watched all the way through was a little bit later. Maybe I was like 10 or 12. Was Hard Ticket to Hawaii, and I was, I was a young man learning about nature, and when you stumble onto that and you see it, you're like, okay, like I could watch this. But the funny thing happened was I wasn't just watching it for TNA. I got sucked into it. I'm like, oh, this is like a good movie. And then by the time the snake pops out of the toilet, you're like, this is everything I could possibly want in cinema. So then, like, you would have to, like you said, you'd have to, like, happen along these movies. So you would see, when the cable guide came out every month, you would scour the cable guide looking for the name Donna Spear, because you knew if she was in that, and then you would get like Savage Beach or Guns or Do or Die. And then by the time I was 13 or 14, I realized, I was like, man, one guy makes all these movies. I just have to wait a year or two for him to put out a new one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the thing too. I never made that connection myself. Like you said, it was like you would just catch these here and there. And yeah, I can't remember the first time I made that. I think it was when back in the I think it was like the late 2000s. TBS would do like Roadhouse or some kind of action movie like that at midnight. And then I think like
movies for guys who like movies.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. And then I think like the 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. block would be a Sidaris film a lot of the time. And that was when I started to make that connection. I'm like seeing that name Andy Sidaris pop up, every time. Because like again, I'm tuning in because the guide box is saying Bruce Penhall, and I'm like, that's weird. I didn't know he did anything after Chips. I kind of barely remember him in those last seasons of Chips anyway. And then I started to make that connection. And a funny story I actually heard about that. There's a radio show in Boston, a sports radio show that I would listen to sometimes. It's on in the mornings called Toucher and Rich. And Rich, I think his last name is Shirtenleave. His wife actually worked for TBS at that time. And she would tell him oh, I was just in a meeting where they were talking about what they could say and not say in the Sidaris films when they were airing them. Even at like 3 a.m, they still had certain standards that they couldn't, are we able to let the character say that, or do we need to dub it? Are we able to show this happening in the film? And so, yeah, it would be, one of those things like, here's this whole boardroom of people having this conversation about some sex act that, can they describe it? I think Dallas Connection, is probably the hardest one to kind of figure out, Julie Strain's not naked in a lot of those scenes. She's just wearing very skimpy clothing. But is the S&M aspect something that's too much to show even at 3 a.m. on TBS?
Well, and I think that's why Dallas Connection was a good one for us to watch and talk about, because I think it is probably one of the most gratuitous ones. I think Guns and maybe Do or Die, the TNA is a little on the light side. And but in Do or Die, you get Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita in bed with a Playboy playmate, so you don't get to see that very often.
Right. I mean, that was one of the interesting things. Is I think that scene where that woman is having the love scene where Silk, the character Silk, is having the love scene with Pat Morita in that film. That might be the only time I can think of where you have that kind of a situation. And I think Pat Morita, he didn't look horrible at that time. I mean, he was, I guess, in his 60s then. He looked pretty good for his 60s. But, you think of you watch these Seagal movies where he's having love scenes with these actresses, and you wonder what they're thinking, and it's almost like one of those things where you feel like he's like, saying, I've got to have that scene in there, where I wonder with like Pat Morita, where it was like, hey, do you feel comfortable doing this scene here? Are you okay with this? And, it didn't have that even that scene didn't have that feeling of exploitation in it that I think, like I said, you might see in a Seagal movie or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, and also, I mean, like you were saying, catching it on TBS, these movies work when you do snip out the TNA or just kind of, zoom in on, the shoulders and above, because there's a sense of fun about them, and the nudity is more marinade than meat.
Yeah, I think it again, it sort of adds to the fun of it, and I think, you talk about like all these ones that were set in Hawaii. I think it's kind of like the early ones. I think is Dallas Connection, is that the first one, or I can't remember. Enemy Gold, I guess, was set in Dallas, right? Because that's where they're looking for that Civil War treasure.
Right.
So I guess so Fit to Kill might have been the last one that was strictly in Hawaii. And I know Julie Strain talked about when they did Lethal Ladies Return to Savage Beach, I think they shot a lot of that in Louisiana and called it Hawaii, because she joked about that. Like, she loved doing Sidaris' films because she could say that the idea of doing that was she thought was funny to turn Louisiana into Hawaii. But Yeah, I think a lot of those sort of those elements that you see, I mean, like Dallas Connection. One thing, like you can watch Dallas Connection by itself. You don't have to have seen all of the other films before it or after it. But when you watch the other ones, then you start to notice, like, oh, that strip club, that one shows up in a lot of other ones. That's kind of fun. Or Rodrigo Obregon is in this one. Oh, he's in almost all of them. Or that the line that the one character has when he's about to have sex with one of the other characters. He says, "I want to suck the polish off your toes," which was in the second film. So it's kind of cool where these movies exist by themselves, but also when you watch them all together, you see so a lot of like you said, the remote control cars being used as explosives. Those kinds of things.
Well, it's really, I think that the main influence was the Bond movies, and there's a lot of that, kind of feel where they're, I mean, the Daniel Craig ones kind of like run together, but the Connery and Moore ones they are pretty much self-contained. They don't even have the same Blofeld. You could watch one and enjoy it, or you could be diehards like us and go right through the whole series.
Yeah, and I mean, like that's funny. Hard Ticket to Hawaii. That the Donna Spears' younger sister in that movie, Taryn, she's making constant jokes about Bond the whole time, about James Bond things. So Sidaris, I think, yeah, he was very wasn't shy about showing that connection to his films.
And also, I mean, they went on. I don't know if consciously, but if you think about the one of the themes of the movies is whether it's the characters like the character Warrior by Buff Bagwell starting
Right.
out as a villain and then becoming kind of an ally, and whether they're a separate character, but at least the actress like Julie Strain starts off playing the villainous assassin before turning into like the leader of the group. And it's a lot like the Fast and Furious
Say,
movies,
yeah.
where the villain of the last one kind of comes over and helps, with and becomes part of the crew. And that I like that. I like that kind of all can be forgiven to the
Yeah,
fold.
because
That forget your past crimes. We're going to use your uh, whatever that you can bring to our team to help bring down the next round of bad guys.
yeah. Sorry about that. I thought you cut out for a second. I thought you're yeah. You'd pause there. Yeah, one of the things I'd read about Vin Diesel is he's like a huge Dungeon and Dragons fan, and he always liked this idea of like the quest and adding people to the quest, and you think of like games like Final Fantasy, where if you play around enough, you find a new character that you get to add to your team, kind of thing. And I guess Vin Diesel really liked that idea, but you wonder if there's also a Vin Diesel who was watching these movies and would see, like, yeah, for example, one movie Eric Estrada is the bad guy, the next movie Eric Estrada is part of the team, and yeah, like you said, I mean the Buff Bagwell one I think is the best because he actually does play the same character. He gets I guess converted, and I just love the idea of that. Thinking of WCW wrestling at that time, and in Return to Savage Beach, the love scene that he has with Julie Strain, he's shorter than her and is just not intimidated by that at all. It's like you couldn't get many characters that could do that scene and not be intimidated. And it was a good match there, I thought. So I thought that was actually a positive, decision to bring him on and have him be a good guy and kind of, like you said, all is forgiven, instead of wasting the fact that you think about how many movies where you get somebody as good as a Jason Statham and it's like, well, he was the bad guy and that's so we like the Expendables, right? You could say that with the Expendables, right? Like how
Hmm.
they converted Dolph and he ended up kind of being redeemed so they could bring him back in the other ones, but Van Damme's character, no, he's killed off and that's it. We never get to see him again, and he was a really great character.
And I mean, I think Return to Savage Beach is one of my favorites. I think at that time, like I didn't realize that was going to be the last one. So looking back, it's kind of like bittersweet. But
Yeah.
I remember and being really big into wrestling at that time, and the fact that like you said, that sex scene, it's one of the best of the entire series. And I think we were cheated out of more Buff Bagwell, Julie Strain pair ups.
Yeah. I mean, just like that when they're having sex and he's like kind of checking his hair in the mirror in the scenes,
Hmm.
and Yeah, and I mean, just like the whole thing where she's like, I need to have can you take a walk with me or something? It's like we've seen enough of those movies that we know when somebody needs to go take a walk with somebody that we know what's coming after that. Yeah, when I saw his name, because Day of the Warrior I hadn't seen. That was one that I hadn't seen before I did this, and so I didn't remember that it was Buff Bagwell, I guess, when I saw Lethal Ladies, but because I think with Lethal Ladies, I think that was one of those ones that I saw when I was a bit inebriated, where I was like turned on the TV late at night, and so I probably wasn't paying attention to a lot of it when I first saw it. But when I saw that it was him, because I remember we used to watch when I was in college, we would watch Monday Night Nitro, and it was like you'd get, whatever was going on with the NWO and all of that for the first 2 hours, and then you'd get some kind of direct-to-video movie that they would play on TNT after, like Terminator Woman or some Roddy Piper films. So yeah, just seeing him do those movies, yeah, I know what you mean. Like it would have been nice to see, because I don't think he did any other films than those.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's a good presence. I mean, he's kind of like the best of both worlds, like you were saying. Like the early guys, they're very good looking. They're almost like soap opera stars. But he has the soap opera good looks, but he also has the muscles to go along with it. So it's really like the total package there. And also, I mean, in Day of the Warrior, they even give him his own wrestling scene. So I mean, it's just like, well, again, what do we have at our disposal? We have a wrestler. Okay, we're gonna make sure that we have a wrestling scene.
Yeah, and I think too at that time, with the WCW, it was a little bit more like I don't think they were as controlled as WWE actors now. I think if they do films, it's like really heavily controlled. Like I don't think if Sidaris was going to make another movie now, I don't think he could just go to the WWE and just take who he wanted. Like I think they only do like WWE production films, and I think like even The Rock, like it was a lot of work for The Rock to kind of get out from underneath the WWE when he and I don't even know if he even fully is now, with his big career. So yeah, at that time it was kind of a more fun thing where you could just grab a wrestler and they weren't as tied to that product. And it is interesting that more people didn't. I mean, Roddy Piper obviously has had the big career, and Hulk Hogan did some films there. But someone like a Buff Bagwell, I mean, wrestlers are actors in gen. They're used to that, and especially, I mean, maybe with Sidaris, maybe the hard part is finding someone who could have as much fun with it as Bagwell did.
Yeah, and another aspect of Return of Savage Beach that I really enjoyed was Shay Marks, who really didn't do a whole lot after. And I mean, she's like one of those women where it's like, she's beautiful and she's capable, but I mean, she's more not so much as a Julie Strain, but it's a different kind of capable. And I just think that movie just had so much going for it that maybe it was better that was kind of the swan song for the franchise, because it seemed like that was the one where kind of like all the elements were good. That's the bow on top. We're all good here.
Yeah, and they kind of bring everybody back. I mean, they're even using file footage of Donna Spear, and her sister's character. So it was almost like there was like a reunion kind of thing. They're all back with the radio station. K Sexy is back, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like it kind of tied the whole franchise up in a bow, and could there have been more? Probably, but it to keep that level of consistency from 85 to 98. I mean, man, that's it takes some doing, and I think that might have been the right decision.
Yeah, and I mean, how many movies do we see that try to do what these films did and fail? Like either there's too much of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge of like, oh, we're in on the joke, which this film never had that. Even though there were things that were happening that were silly or funny, it was never like we're showing you that we're in on the joke. I think that's one thing that I really appreciated about these, and they did. I think. Sidaris, I don't know if maybe he had a clock in his head when he was writing the scripts out. And he's like, oh, I've written too many pages without a sex scene or an action scene. So maybe I need to, shoehorn one in here or something, or I don't know, just the way he wrote scripts, maybe just in his head he just felt like, okay, whoever was writing the scripts for these movies, they kind of knew the pacing that it needed to have. And so you have that combination, and again, the fact that these are a lot of times these aren't professional actors. They're Playboy playmates or wrestlers. I mean, you do have some people every once in a while. You get a Pat Morita or a Bruce Penhall, but the fact that they all kind of got what was happening in these films, and they were able to be a part of them in a way that always felt organic. Wolf Larson, was in a couple of the earlier ones, and it all just seemed to work the way that they did it.
Yeah, and it's funny you were talking about like the ticking clock in his head. Like you can actually kind of see it in Dallas Connection, where the first half hour is pretty much women having sex and killing the guy or taking a shower. Like, okay, well that's a good first act. And then the second act is, you see the villains doing it. Then you see the heroines getting debriefed and then debriefing the men and having sex. You're like, okay, that's a good second act. And then the third act, Andy Sidaris like, well, shit, we gotta tie all this plot up. So it seems like there's a lot of plot that kind of gets thrown at you at the end, especially with the little twist endings involving the blow up doll and the Jeep that gets blown up. And it seems like it's okay, it's all wrapped up, it's done, bye.
Yeah, well, because one of the interesting things, right, is I think when you're watching the movie, right, so just to give people an idea of how the plot works, Julie Strain is the head of this sort of international group of assassins that are beautiful women. So we see her hit her mark in the first scene, and then there's two other women. Julie K. Smith is one of them, who plays Cobra. They assassinate their marks, and we find out that these marks are like scientists who that I guess they all have their own computer chip that they can add to this huge scientific. What is it? It's like a laser or something, or like
a satellite or something.
That's right. Yeah, and so apparently there's like a huge space event that's happening. I think that's supposed to like coincide with, because I think the main character, the main female character or main female heroine, she makes a comment like very like blasé when they're explaining it to her. Samantha Phillips is the actress. They're making the comment when it's being explained to her about what it is. She's just like, yeah, well, that means we, if we don't do this now, we won't be able to do it again for 130 years. Like, like she completely gets it, that like why they need to get this satellite in the air, I guess, as soon as possible, or have this work the way it needs to work. But yeah, so we're introduced to these female assassins, and then we get a sense of like, okay, who are the agents on this team? So we've got Bruce Penhall, we've got Mark Barriere, I think, is that Barriere? Who is his partner, who was in the previous film from this. Bruce Penhall, of course, he's been in, I think, what did he start with, the third film, I think?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Savage Beach, maybe?
Yeah. The thing with Bruce Penhall, again, I always say, is I remember those old Chips episodes where he was the younger brother to, was it Wilson, who took over for I can't think of the name of Ponch's partner in the early season. You're right, yeah, right, because it's that they remove him and they bring in Wilson, I guess, is that right? Was that his name, Wilson? I can't remember his first name, but
yeah, it's hazy. Like I had the toys and I had the TV. I remember the TV show, but I know Eric Estrada, which was cool because they once they knew they got Penhall, they were like, man, is there a chance we could get Estrada in here?
Right, because Penhall's character, he was like
into Estrada.
Right, he must. Well, that's what I was thinking when I saw him in those two there. Yeah, I had a feeling that maybe Penhall had something to do with it, because his character of like in Chips, he was like a stunt cyclist, and then he joins the Force in the later season.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, probably part of the thing for me was like TNT would show Chips reruns in the 90s. And again, like the kind of like the late 90s, like I'd come home from school or whatever, or college or whatever it was, I'd turn that on. And so then it was like whenever you have a show that's on every day, it's like you kind of get into those deep later seasons, which, it's like if it's a sitcom, it's like they're adding kids to the show. And I guess with Chips, they I guess the younger brother, as a stunt rider, was their version of like, whatever the
Leonardo
Andy,
DiCaprio on Growing Pains.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it just kind of stuck with me when I'd see his name pop up on things. So I mean, with Dallas Connection, when that movie starts, and those opening block credits that Sidaris started using after like the third or fourth movie, I always just think of that Bruce Penhall being flashed across the screen like that.
Penhall font, we'll call it.
Exactly, the Penhall font. I always just think of that, and then whether it's Donna Spear or Julie Strain or whoever else, and it just it just tells me I'm in for a great Sidaris film. But I always think of that. I mean, that just seeing that font when I was watching like the all of the movies in a row, it just took me back to just like 3 a.m. The room's partially spinning a bit. I've, made some frozen dinner or something after being at the bar. It kind of like all of that, those memories kind of brought back to, the apartment that I had in the early 2000s, all of that stuff kind of would come back together with that Bruce Penhall flashing across the screen like that.
Well, and, they're, in a strange way, they're comfort films,
Yeah.
And you know what you're going to get when you turn it on, and they always deliver. Yeah. And you don't have to think for 93 minutes, and the action is better than good. The ladies are beautiful. The pacing is usually pretty crisp. It looks great. It's always well photographed. The plots are silly enough to follow. And it's, that he never struck out, but he I don't know if he ever swung for the fences, but it was always like a ground rule double every time.
Right. Nowadays with baseball, right, it's either home runs or strikeouts. But back then, we had appreciation for that utility infielder who could put the ball in play. And yeah, you knew he was always going to put the ball in play. Nobody wanted to deal with Sidaris in the 9th inning with guys on base. Sure. What was I and one of the things too, I'm just thinking about with the characters in this, and you're talking about the plot, and like you don't have to think for 90 minutes. Part of the thing was I think they may have written themselves into a corner when our 2 main male characters are essentially that slipped a Mickey by the 2 female assassins working under Julie Strain. When they find out that I guess maybe I should tell people part of the plot is these computer chips, right, that these scientists were supposed to be delivering, and they were assassinated before they could deliver. Turned out they somehow were able to smuggle them out before they died. So our agents all have their own computer chip. They're all supposed to keep them so they can each have their own and keep them safe so that the bad guys can't put them all together to have this device. And so Julie Strain's lethal women that she has working underneath her lethal ladies, they each get Penhall and Barriere separate, and sort of have a romantic evening with them and then slip them a Mickey. And I guess from the standpoint of the writing, they must have thought, well, okay, these 2 assassins that just killed 2 guys earlier on, why are they not killing Penhall and Barriere as well? Like, wouldn't they just kill them too instead of leaving them alive? And I guess they realized that what they had to have for the plot twist at the end was that, oh, it turns out they're double agents, and that's why they didn't kill them. That they were, the whole thing with the inflatable guy that we thought was assassinated. It turned out it was an inflatable dummy that did that. It's almost like they realized, like, we need to have a reason why they weren't being killed off. And so, yeah, why don't we just say they're double agents? That works fine. And, for us, we get to the whole movie, the end of the movie, and that works for me too. I was okay with it.
Yeah, well, I think I really think that one of the reasons why Sidaris keep bringing back people from film to film, whether they're playing the same character or not. I mean, I think he gets them in front of a camera, and he is genuinely pleased by what they bring to the movie. Like Julie K. Smith is like kind of like the excuse me, I would say like the MVP of that movie that isn't Julie Strain, because I think in a movie there's always like when you see Julie Strain and then there's a scene without Julie Strain, your heart sinks a little. You're like, oh man, Julie Strain's not on screen. but Julie K. Smith has like a different kind of energy to her, and it's like I said, it's kind of like that tough uh, woman that could throw back shots with you, but still be very feminine, be very sexy, and it's a really cool combination. And same with Wendy Hamilton, who played Scorpion. Scorpion and Cobra were their code names, and they have their own unique brand of sexiness and toughness that complements Julie Strain. So they're like, you know what? Why do we have to make them the bad guy and get killed? Let's say and it goes to the theme of these movies, or all's forgiven. Yeah, you didn't really mean it. Come on back. We'll put you in the next movie.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing too, like you said, is that when you're doing the movie and you realize, wow, Julie K. Smith really is, like you said, she's carrying the scenes that don't have Julie Strain. Like she's really electric on screen as well. I think when that happens, it's like, oh well, we can't, kind of the same thing I think Sidaris did with Donna Spear when he was, realizing like this whole Abilene thing is not working. I just can't seem to get one Abilene to do the, and I think. Again, I think in the third film, I think when he gets to that point in Savage Beach, not Savage Beach, Picasso Trigger, the one where Jesse's dad from Full House was the bad guy. In Picasso Trigger, it's like, who is this? This third Abilene. Like we don't really have any connection to this Abilene thing. It's just like, just the fact that a character named Abilene can't shoot straight. The guy who's playing it, again, he seemed like a poor man's Aidan Quinn. But on the other hand, Donna Spear, we recognize her from the previous movie. We remember who she was. And I think there's almost a sense of like, well, why is she not running this? And then I think there was also the guy who played Jade, the guy with the man bun before man buns were a thing. The karate guy who was also in Hard Ticket to Hawaii. But I think Sidaris noticed like, oh, you know what? Maybe the women need to be the star of this. I think he was trying with Malibu Express to remake Stacy with a male protagonist, thinking like that's what sells, that we need to see a man in control, I guess, or something like that. And I think he realizes by Picasso Trigger that no, we're perfectly fine with consuming films that have women as the lead protagonists. And yeah, Julie K. Smith, she feels like she's like in that tradition of that kind of actress. And I think you're right. I think there's probably a sense of like, man, how many women can we get to play these roles the way we need them to be played? Obviously, yeah, if you get Julie Strain, you're really doing well. But who else can play these parts? And yeah, Julie K. Smith. I mean, I think she had a really good career after this in B movies. But I really liked her, and I think you're right. It was kind of a nice, sort of like you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief when you find out she's really not a baddie at the end.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like a salt and pepper kind of thing. It's like I'm not saying it because they're one's blonde and one's brunette, but it's you need a kind of a hand in hand combo to where that, and we've seen this too. So many of the movies that we watch, there's one star in the movie, and sometimes that one star did not film the whole schedule of the picture, so he's only in a very small part of it. So I mean, we're used to having lulls in the action, or at least seeing our stars represented on screen, and it's always nice when that supporting player can come in and just keep the ball going into the next action scene, and I mean even the scene like the scene where like she kind of like endeared herself to me for all times, because like I think this was my first Julie K. Smith movie I saw when it first came out. Was a lot of people can blow somebody up with a RC car. Not a lot of people can sell it with the fist pump and the afterwards. And that like you get the sense that even though she's a double agent or whatever, it's like she loves her job, man. I like that. Like that little touch just kind of just makes it from just being an action scene to kind of like what we were saying, kind of being in on the joke, but not have it be a joke.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing too. Like, because when we think of like the the Terran character in the earlier ones, who was using a lot of the RC cars and stuff, and Donna Spear with the rocket launcher, whatever, whenever things would get blown up, they would kind of do that fist pump thing. And again, to bring in somebody new like Julie K. Smith, who's never done these films before, isn't a part of the tradition of them. Whereas like I think a lot of the other people in the film, like someone like a Donna Spear, for example, or Bruce Penhall, they got a chance to sort of really get into the groove with what Sidaris wanted. So, film after film, they kind of, over time get the hang of it. For someone like a Julie K. Smith to just show up and suddenly be able to do, it's like you watching this, you wouldn't know that she hadn't been in all the other 5 before this if you just seen this one.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, it's kind of like a carrying on of a tradition. It's like you go from Connery to Moore. And I'm not just saying that because his son was in one of the movies, but there's like a passing of the baton, like you were saying on Fit to Kill, and they bring a level of quality that we come to expect, but they kind of make it their own too.
Yeah, and for sure, Julie Strain. I mean, I think that's one of the things too with Julie Strain is that you don't bring her on saying she's just going to do what Donna Spear does. You bring her on to do what Julie Strain does. And that's one thing I kind of liked about Fit to Kill was that you had the passing of the torch in a way where the two of them were actually in the film together. And so we could kind of see that, okay, Julie Strain is not supposed to be Donna Spear. She's supposed to be Julie Strain, but she's going to take these films in a different direction, but still enough of it the same direction that we get it. Like Julie Strain gets what makes these movies work, and I think that's one of the things about Julie Strain. I just get the sense from just seeing interviews with her and that she was very intelligent and able to perceive what the audience wanted with these things and could really deliver it.
And I mean, I think what's unfortunate is and I'm lumping Julie K. Smith in with Julie Strain, but it's like it only seemed like guys like Wynorski, Ray, and Sidaris knew how to properly give them their due on screen. In so many other movies, they're playing a stripper, or the bad guy's arm candy, or the girl that gets murdered in the first scene, and then they have to, figure out, who killed her. Where, all the like the Bear Wench movies and like where they just allow them to do their thing and get out of the way and just Julie Strain, a lot of her early movies, like Psycho Cop 2, she gets killed off, and not before she does a sexy striptease, of course, but in her later movies where she kind of found her brand, she's not the victim. She is capable, smart, sexy. She's the total package, and I think it's a shame that so many other filmmakers besides the ones I mentioned just thought of them as the kind of the TNA to sell the movie or the box art or something.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I almost think like as you get into the 2000s with her career, I almost feel like she was sort of driving it somewhere. She was like, you know what, I don't have to be the arm candy, or I don't have to be the victim. If when I'm looking at scripts and what people want me to play, I want to have a stronger role in the film, which I think is really good. I think you're right too. I think for all of the crap that people give Wynorski, I'm not saying that the people necessarily give them to specifically crap, Wynorski or Fred Olen Ray or Sidaris, but people talk about these movies sometimes with a note of derision. I think that there is something to be said for the fact that the way that these guys made these movies, they were often female protagonists. I mean, I was just reading an article recently about Joss Whedon, who made Buffy, and how everybody just thought he was this great feminist guy doing Buffy, and how great he was. And it turns out he's really not good. He wasn't. He did all kinds of bad things, but nobody would ever talk about Sidaris like that. They wouldn't never think of it like that because what he did wasn't mainstream. But if you compare Buffy to Sidaris' films. I mean, what are you seeing that's really that different? I mean, how ahead of his time was Joss Whedon with the Buffy TV show when you're looking at these Lethal Ladies movies that, yes, because the characters were topless, I guess there's a sense that, well, they can't be sort of, or a female empowerment type of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are hardcore feminists you know, to the gills. I mean, it always goes back to, I always say, I treat art house stuff like it's, B movie crap, and I treat B movie crap like it's art house material. But really, you can look at the feminist themes of these movies, and they're better. Andy was doing better stuff, in the 80s and 90s than what's represented today, I think. And I think, I mean, it all goes back, yes, it's comically so, but, the guys can't shoot, and yet somehow they've been elevated to the same status as their female counterparts, who are much better shot, much better at doing their job. And I think there's, there's a touch of that where, like, well, the woman has to carry the man for a good portion of the movie. And if she chooses to go to bed with him, it's because there's a mutual attraction. And there's never, like, like kind of like one of those rapey scenes that you would see in the 70s, like drive-in movies. It's always about her and her pleasure. I mean, when Julie says, anchors away, I mean, not many guys would focus on the woman's pleasure. So, I mean, it's all there if you want to look for it, as I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest thing to a like a sort of a forced sex scene or something like that is in Hard Hunted, right, where Donna Spear's character has amnesia, and this shady character that's sort of like working as a double agent between the two tells her when she has amnesia that they were a couple and they have sex. That's probably like the closest thing that you get to some kind of like real like forced scene now that I think about it. I don't think that there was ever anything like that in any of the movies, that something like that happened. And I think that's telling, I think, and again, that character is seen as like a really bad character, but like you said, there's always a mutual attraction, like like for example, Julie K. Smith's scene with Bruce Penhall, which I read, I think in the IMDb trivia, I read that apparently his wife, Penhall's wife, was not happy with that scene, and so apparently Penhall, I guess, felt like he was, I don't know if he would say challenged by Julie K. Smith, but he felt like, I think Julie K. Smith's energy that we were talking about, that she was bringing to this film, it inspired him to want to like really do this scene. And apparently when that scene happened, like, she was not happy. But you can see with these characters that there's a mutual attraction there. So, Julie K. Smith is, supposed to be an adversary to Bruce Penhall, and we find out maybe not they're adversaries, but there's a sense that what she's doing here, she's enjoying it too. Like she's finds him attractive. She's not just trying to she's not just getting through a scene or something like that. Or that that there's not like some kind of power dynamic, like you said. It's she's taking advantage of him, and I think that element of these movies, I think it makes it easier. First of all, you can enjoy them guilt-free. I think you can enjoy them saying like, okay, yeah, this is, yes, they're jiggle exploitation, as I say, but you don't have to feel guilt-free. But also, I think it does make someone like Julie K. Smith's character or Julie Strain's characters feel more like the heroine, and like you said, there's an empowerment level to it that I think people don't want to talk about those movies being like that. I think they don't want to talk about a Playboy model or Penthouse model taking off their clothes in the movie and saying, oh well, how is that empowering? That's that can't be. But I think for these women that are in these movies, they're making sure that it's that. It feels like they're putting their stamp on it.
Well, and I mean, the same thing holds true to like the drive-in movies of the 60s and 70s. If the filmmaker wanted to put some sort of statement into the movie, they kind of would have to dress it up under the guise of a B movie and not just like kind of make a statement movie, because it would, not be very commercial. But Sidaris is able to kind of slip that into like an underlying theme of the movie. And, I think, like you said, people kind of, look down their nose at these movies because they played at 1 o'clock at on Showtime or whatever. And but it's no real difference to like something playing on Netflix now. I mean, it was just a different way to make a movie available. He was making movies for a market, and that was the market that was selling at that time. And of course, it did very well on video, but like, you know, I think a lot of the people that would watch that at 1 o'clock in the movie, it would go over their head. But like I said, like, for somebody like you that's just watched 12 in a row, I'm sure you can pull out certain things like that and say, yeah, there's a connecting, undercurrent to these movies that they're not just cheesecake.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what it is, I think when you're watching the movies and when you realize that you're not bored, after however many in a row. I mean, I don't know how many I did I think there was a Sunday that I kind of was just sort of on my own. My wife was off doing something else, where I think I watched like 4 of them. But I think it was the Sunday before President's Day, so I think that's what it was. So I knew I didn't have to work the next day either. So I think that was when I watched the 4. But the rest of them I kind of staggered over time. But it was one of those things where I'm realizing like, wow, I'm enjoying these movies. Yes, I think there are people that will bag on a movie if the dialogue's not tight, if there are things happening that feel like they maybe could have been edited in post, or that somebody didn't proofread the script enough or something, which I get. But I think thinking about it from that standpoint, it's amazing that the stories were as cohesive as they were, I think, considering that they were kind of just felt like they were maybe being pumped out quickly, that the plot twists and things like that happen in them, they actually work. And how many movies do we see at this DTV level where you're just like, why did that happen at the end? Why did they shoehorn that in? Why did they put that in? And I never got that sense when I was watching these.
Well, I think that goes back to his background. I mean, Sidaris started as a director and cameraman for ABC's Wide World of Sports, and I think there's a sense of that production schedule, a television production schedule. How do we do a sporting event in a 2-hour block and deliver the most bang for the buck? And I think that work ethic he took that and carried it over to his film. So there's like an economy there that's why I think they all sort of have a uniform look to them. And I mean, people like to toss out auteur theory. I mean, Andy Sidaris is one of the few that I can say it's an auteur movie. He's an auteur because all his movies, if you watch 3 minutes of any given one, you're like, okay, that's an Andy Sidaris movie because of the rhythm of the cutting, the subject matter, and of course the TNA.
Yeah, and I mean, things like the remote control vehicles blowing things up, and which I think is, I think that's all great. I mean, it feels like maybe he even had a passion for that, because I think, is it in Guns that they or maybe Do or Die, where they actually go to an event in Nevada, away from Las Vegas, where they're kind of out on like this old airstrip or something like that, and people are flying the planes everywhere. So I wonder if that was even a passion for him on the side, where he just sort of incorporated it into the movies.
Yeah, or like all the airplanes and the early ones. It's always seems like there's always that kind of obligatory flyby shot of the girls looking down, pointing, and then seeing the vistas or whatever. And I don't think it was a matter of padding or whatever. I think it was a matter of, what do I have available? I have a contact with somebody who takes guided tours of, in an airplane. Oh, okay, we'll put that in the movie. We'll put his name in the credits, and that we can base a scene around that.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, they were kind of one of the first to really get into like the body glove clothing movement, and I think that's another thing too. It's like, you got a deal with Body Glove, or you can, sort of, we'll show your, those body glove clothes in our films, and of course they work, right, because they're skin tight, so they actually, work for what Sidaris is going for, but also, he can probably get a discount there because he's displaying the logos really prominently in the scenes. And so, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think the ingenuity that goes into direct-to-video when it's done well, I think, whether it's Sidaris or Fred Olen Ray, Wynorski, Albert Pyun, I think it's not appreciated enough, because I think we just look at, I think we grew up in that period of time post 1970s where it's kind of, Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola, these kind of big name, Lucas, these directors that got big budgets and kind of made the movies at the pace that they wanted to make. And it was like, if the studio gave them a hard time, it was the studio's problem, that, we kind of respect this sort of like director driven thing. And when you think about it from a Sidaris standpoint, where he's just kind of making do with what he's got and he's making it work, I almost have more appreciation for that than, somebody who's going to have a, 9-figure budget and just kind of, piss it away and maybe not even make the movie. Maybe like Coppola with was it the Cotton Club that I think he did end up making that movie, but he fought with Robert Evans so much about it that it ended up like being a disaster. I think the fact that Sidaris can make a movie almost every year and it's entertaining, I have a really high appreciation for that.
Well, yeah, I mean it doesn't go unnoticed, by fans like you and me. And I think it's one of those things too that we also have the benefit of nostalgia, catching it late at night. And I think there might be a new generation that might not pull the trigger on, Picasso trigger on it, seeing these movies, because there might be some sort of built-in notion that they are kind of that sleazy kind of aspect, just because the benefit that they have, Playboy Playmates and Penthouse Pets in them. But if that can be further from the truth. And I think that like you said, them being on Tubi, and I know Mill Creek Entertainment has like all of them on DVD for like $6. I think you can get that on Amazon. I think it's like the best bang for the buck deal in the history of physical media. These movies do have a lot to offer, beyond just the surface.
Yeah, I think that was something I think I was maybe surprised when I watched them all together like that. I think you expect that you're going to see some duds. I mean, I think the Picasso Trigger for me maybe is one that I don't want to say it was a dud. I think Sidaris was smart in that one, because that the character, the person he had playing the Abilene character in that third one really wasn't working. It wasn't great. And I think the fact that he could pivot out of that and sort of make it, sort of recover from that, I think if he had just kept driving, from Picasso Trigger and just kept making the same movie, I think, suddenly, I think it would start to go. I think I was starting to kind of feel that. I was like, what's the next one going to be like after Picasso Trigger? Because that one, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but it did feel like the whole Abilene thing was getting tired and, and all of that. And sure enough, they come back with Savage Beach, and, now it's driven by Donna Spear and by the character who played her sister. It just kept calling her sister. I should probably get her name actually, but he changes he changes it just enough that he still has the same the same elements that make it works, but he changes it just enough to say, okay, instead of an Abilene that can't shoot, I'm going to have Donna Spear, who we've had in the previous two. She's going to be the lead now. And her sister's Hope Marie Carlton that plays that character. We'll have her play that. Now they with that change, the movie kind of just keeps moving. It kind of just keeps, I guess it keeps having that enjoyment factor to it. So it's almost like he did what he needed to do to keep it from being stale at the same time.
Well, I think too, like you said, he was following the blueprint of remaking Stacy, and I think he was at first maybe emulating maybe kind of what the expectations were, for like a male driven action movie, and then he realized, well, no, these movies are perfectly fine with having ladies in the cast who can handle themselves, and if I get 2 or 3 good ones like Donna Spear, Roberta Vasquez, Hope Marie Carlton, they, if I have, them at the forefront, they can carry these movies, and maybe we can take these, kind of quote unquote, essential male characters and kind of just relegate them to the boyfriend role, essentially. But, and that, I think, by doing that, it's a, that's where you start kind of seeing the shift where it's like, okay, these guys are only there because of their looks, and they got where they are for being a man, where these women probably had to fight tooth and nail to be where they are, and they're better shots, better at their job. They had the benefit of using their feminine wiles to get what they want to complete an objective, and but at the same time everybody's drinking champagne in the jacuzzi, so it's always that sense of everything's going to be all right at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always that scene at the end where everybody's kind of hanging out together. Because I think in the first one, right, in Malibu Express, it's Cody, sort of giving away, how he solved the crime, which is kind of common in those detective movies, right? Sort of like Columbo at the end telling everybody how he figured out who did the murder. And then it shifts to Hope Marie Carlton's character explaining why she was able to keep whatever spoils, that they discovered, whatever gold or, priceless artifact or painting, why she was able to keep it, some loophole in the law that, of course, made no sense. But the police officers that were there, as part of the DEA agents were like, oh, yeah, sure, of course, that makes sense. And then it became, later it was, these sort of like you said, like the hot tub scene, or they'd be on the back of another yacht, maybe, perhaps, but all sort of having, saying, oh, another great job, well done. We all made it, and it's all a nice time. I think it's another thing that I like about these is that people just don't get killed off. I think it's just a common thing in action movies where it's like the hero's best buddy has to get killed off, and it's not really anything that's a reason why we have to do that. I don't know why that would always happen, but these movies didn't do that. These movies were like, no, let's have everybody. Maybe people get shot. Maybe there's some nice bright red paint on them that's supposed to be blood, but they don't die, which I think is kind of a cool thing, that people aren't just getting killed off all the time.
And even the villains, we talk about the male characters, the male hero characters kind of being these secondary characters. Even like the villains, like the sidekick, like in Dallas Connection, like the guy who follows Julie Strain around making little quips, like she does all the work and then he just like pops his head around the corner. Or like the two, I think it's in Enemy Gold, like the two kind of like bumbling hitmen that are always kind of like arguing like a old married couple. So it's like the shoes on the other foot too when it comes to the villains. Like the male characters are just as kind of like, I wouldn't say bumbling, but like kind of not the equal of their female counterparts.
Yeah, there's always like sort of like this criminal mastermind who is sort of the one that's driving the bad action. But then, right, he'll hire these bumbling assassins to do a job for him, which of course they screw up. And sometimes we find out that the baddie actually hired them on purpose because he knew they would screw it up. But yeah, they would, there was that, was it in Picasso Trigger, or maybe not Picasso Trigger. Actually, it was was it? No, maybe it was Guns, right? It was Guns where they first bring up those two bumbling guys that work for Estrada, and
right.
They would sometimes dress up as women to commit their hits, and so they end up going to a gay bar to try to hunt them down, and they end up finding them hanging out there, and so. It was, I think, there's always, I think Sidaris was always like willing to kind of push the envelope on things and do things that other movies necessarily weren't doing, but it all seemed to fit, like it all seemed to work in the context of the films.
And I mean, that kind of goes back to just, his background and, kind of, on a television schedule and budget, and making these movies look as good as they did for like the means that they had, and utilizing, I mean, he did a lot of location work, and I mean, to get, grind out all that and still be able to kind of put his own, fingerprints on it. Because like, even though the Dallas Connection is directed by his son, it's Andy's fingerprints are all over it, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, even like I think the cinematography, it wasn't what was it? Harold Wexler, is that his name? The one that's usually doing the cinematography in these. But it wasn't him, but it still had the feel of that, like Dallas Connection, that scene where where Julie K. Smith is and has the love scene with Bruce Penhall and then slips him the Mickey. Yeah, Howard Wexler, that's his name, the cinematographer. I thought it was a Howard Wexler. I thought he had done the cinematography for Dallas Connection because of the way it looked. There's that one scene where they're in the hot tub, and the focus is on the champagne flute that's filled with champagne in the foreground, and then they focus on Penhall and Julie K. Smith in the jacuzzi in the background, and it's the kind of shot that, like, if I'm doing like a blog or something on Jean-Luc Godard films or Bergman films or something, I'd be taking that screenshot to show what a great what a great director this person is. But you see it here, and you don't. I mean, I appreciated it, but people don't think that movies like that are shot this way. I think part of it is, nowadays the way that a lot of direct-to-video movies are made, it's like almost like just, get a good director of photography and then just fix it all in post and call it good. Whereas these movies are made where they have to be made competently, because I don't think there's that same mindset of do it all in post. Howard Wexler, he takes pride in what he does. Sidaris takes pride in making a good movie quickly. And so you get scenes like that, these establishing shots, or the way things are filmed, that I think people don't appreciate like they should, because I think we're so used to it. It's got to be these sort of, like you said, these art house films.
Yeah, and the quality of that, just carries on from film to film, and I think it gets stronger. Like, going back to the Buff Bagwell sex scene, like by the waterfall. I mean, there are little moments that most B directors would just put the camera down and let it go, but there's always kind of it feels more of like and they did this in the old Playboy video centerfolds. It was tastefully done. It wasn't just gratuitous. There is a sense of kind of a building to it's not just a lot of the softcore late night Skinamax stuff where they just go at it and then that's it. There's like a building to it, and you're right. It's not appreciated by as much as it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this the last time you were on. We were talking about Santa's Summer House, and talking about how when you get a David Dakota or you get a Fred Olen Ray to do a Christmas movie, and I guess you could probably do the same thing with Sidaris. I mean, he probably could be, if he wanted. I mean, obviously he passed away, so he couldn't. But if he were around today and he wanted to, he could probably pump out 5 Christmas movies a year too. I think that's one of the things that it seems like cable TV has come back to these guys. Cable TV was big with these guys in the 80s and into the 90s, and then they had a sense of like, we don't need them. We can just get a director of photography. The actor can be the director, or a stuntman can be the director. We don't need an actual director to run this. And just get in the editor, and just edit it all in post, make it really quick, flashy edits. No one will know the difference. And it's almost like they've come back and said, no, we need someone like this who can kind of get a good shooting schedule going, keep things on pace, on budget, and make them work. And I think for us coming up in this tradition of watching these kinds of movies, I think at the time we didn't really think to look at them that way. We just we enjoyed them, and that was it. But then, now you look at them, from a different perspective and say, yeah, you know what, these were competently made films, and I don't think we'd enjoy them as much if they weren't competently made. I think that's part of what makes them fun to watch.
Well, I mean, we can watch them in 2021 and look at them, kind of through the prism of this year, and you can look at it through the Me Too movement, like, and I think viewers could look at this, that didn't grow up with them and still be surprised at how, pro-woman, pro-feminist, pro woman's pleasure that they are. And, it's one of those things where, like, how much stuff can you look back from the 80s now and you just kind of cringe? You know what I mean? And you don't cringe watching any of these.
Yeah, I mean, I know John Cross, who does the after movie diner. He always does like a New Year's Eve episode with like Mo Porn, who does Drunk on VHS, and Dark Paul Croson. They always have like a theme every year. They do their New Year's Eve one, and a couple of years ago they did the romp movie. Like Hot Dog the movie. Revenge of the Nerds. Those kinds of films. And yeah, whenever you watch those ones, right? I mean, there's a lot of voyeur aspects to them. Like these movies, there's really no voyeur part, right? There's no like, Donna Spears getting naked and some skeezy guy is spying on her, through a hole in the sheet or something like that. There's none of that kind of element to it, right? It's not like like Animal House where John Belushi is using a ladder to sneak up and spy on. You don't see any of that here. You see, if Donna Spear gets naked in front of Bruce Penhall or whoever it is that she gets naked in front of, she's doing it because she wants to, because she's attracted to this person and she's getting naked in front of them, and or she's getting naked on screen for us, and she knows she's being filmed being naked. It's not like a situation where she's changing and somebody's spying on her. And I think that's a really important part about these, is that when you think of like you said, there's so much from the 80s that would make us cringe. There's nothing in these that has any of that element to it. I mean, I was trying to think if there really was a scene where even a bad guy was like spying on a woman changing, and I don't even think that happened. I think nothing like that really ever happens in these films.
I mean, they are gratuitous, yes, but that's kind of what makes it fun. I mean, like, there are many scenes in these movies where they'll be working out and they get a phone call, okay, meet me here at whatever time, and then they disrobe because they have to change, because they have to go meet this person. But it's like that attention to detail thing. It's like, okay, I don't know if it's Sidaris saying, okay, well, if we see her in her workout clothes and then 2 minutes later we see her in this elegant dress, how did she get that way? I don't trust the audience to make that leap. I have to show her actually take off the outfit. So there is some gratuitousness to it, but it's not. It's more in the sense of fun and not leering.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like there's why the women always have to be topless when they're in the hot tub. Just for whatever reason, that's how it works. They've always got to be topless in the hot tub. But I think when you're talking about Playboy models who have been naked before in magazines that are sold throughout the world, it doesn't have the same kind of voyeuristic quality to it that this young actress who's trying to make it is in a DTV film and she's doing a love scene with whoever it is. Maybe it's not even Seagal. Maybe it's just like some guy that just wants to make his own DTV films, and he's having this actress get naked, and either she gets naked herself or they bring a body double in to get naked, and the whole thing just kind of feels like it's all forced and they're just grafting it in there. With these, you're watching Playboy models, and it just feels like it's part of the deal, that the way that they get naked in the films is also like they just seem like they're professionals at it. They just sort of they disrobe and put something else on, and there's no issues with them trying to figure out how the straps go on the dress or anything like that. They know all of this, and I think that adds a quality to it, like you said, where everything feels, I don't know if consensual is the right word, but everything feels like it, again, like you said, it's not like, it doesn't have that sleazy aspect to it that that it should. I think this should have a sleazy aspect to it, and it doesn't have it.
And I think too, I mean, that's probably how they were marketed, because at the same time you had the Playboy channel was being very big, and I think cable was kind of looking for similar avenues that to kind of rival the Playboy channel market. And I think if you could cut some of the nude scenes out of these movies and they would look at home as part of a Playboy video magazine, but when you graft them onto this James Bond plot, they become something more than the sum of their parts. And I think maybe the hope was that somebody flipping through the channels late at night would see the nude scene, stop and watch it, and then get sucked into the movie like I did at 10 years old and be like, man, this is a good movie. So if that was the plan, it definitely worked for me.
Yeah, right. So it's like you got the box art with the women on it, and you splash Bruce Penhall's name, and maybe somebody only a few years removed from Chips like me is thinking like, okay, I'll check this out. Or like you said, you're flipping through HBO late at night or whatever whatever cable channel it is, and you see a scene like that, and you think, what is this? Yeah, like you said, this looks like something I could watch at 2 a.m, and then like you said, when the movie starts going, you realize like, hey, this actually isn't a bad film. Like there's, yeah, I mean, there are low budget elements to it. Like I said, I like the dialogue. I think is the biggest one. Like when you see characters in the film talking to each other, a lot of times they're, they say things that sound great the first time somebody's writing the script, and then I think again with Sidaris' shooting schedule, it's like we can't just change this. We can't reshoot it. We can't have it sound more natural. This is just how it's got to be. And I think people will knock a film when they see that, but I think for me, I think you've mentioned this before when it comes to direct to video that or B movies, that you grade them on a curve, and I think that's important. I think a movie that's not trying to tell you that it is Oscar worthy or whatever, if it's not trying to sell you as something like that, I think if everything else works, you can forgive things like that.
Well, I mean, a lot of the times too, like like I said, for Dallas Connection, you go along at a steady clip, a couple nude scenes here and there. Then at some point, you're going to have to put a plot in there. So some of those scenes do tend to be kind of exposition heavy. And when you deal with, women who are primarily models, not necessarily, uh, theatrically trained actresses, they are going to, it might sound a bit awkward. And, I don't know if it's, so much the dialogue as in like, okay, if we can just get, like you said, get through the scene, convey the information, that's enough till we get to the next exploding remote control helicopter and to the next hot tub scene. And I think that works, but also, that's when you really appreciate a Julie Strain, a Julie K. Smith, somebody that can actually take that dialogue, have fun with it, and kind of make it their own as well.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point when you mentioned about Julie Strain, because yeah, I think you make a great point about that. That it's like, the dialogue is often like, backstory, like, oh, yes, I'm one of a, just like, you're a member of a team that does this, this, and this, and it must be really tough doing this and this, and it's like, yes, it's always really tough to, I think what is one of them where the woman is, she's an undercover restaurant owner in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And so like that's what the conversation is. It's like, boy, how are you doing? It must be really hard, the fact that you're a DE agent and you run a restaurant, and it's like, oh yes, I have no time, I feel like I work more when I'm off work, or whatever. And it's like, like, yeah, like you said, it's like kind of the plot exposition is there just in their conversation. And I think you're right with Julie Strain, where it's like, it's almost like she's done this so many times. She's been in so many movies where she's had to do that she just knows how to make it, something that's more fun for us, and I wonder if Julie K. Smith, I wonder if she sort of learned from Julie Strain, because I think she was just starting out when she was doing these films.
Yeah, I mean they did a lot of the Wynorski, Bear Winch projects, and they worked together a lot. And I mean when you watch Julie K. Smith and a lot of the late night cable stuff, I mean, there's still that kind of like, I don't know if I can call it punk rock attitude, or I don't know if biker chick is derogatory, but there's a toughness there that you don't get with a lot of other actresses of her ilk. And I think that when you can find an actress that works in the late night genre that has like that fully formed kind of personality that kind of carries over from film to film, you kind of appreciate that.
Yeah, because I mean, when they bring her back for the next movie, for Day of the Warrior, which which has Buff Bagwell as well, and it's the the first one where Julie Strain gets to play a good guy, or a hero. Yeah, Julie K. Smith's character, remember, like, I think she has kind of like a striptease with like the S&M mask on, for the guys, and you get a sense there when you're watching that, like, that's not, especially for a person that's supposed to be a protagonist in a Sidaris film, that's different from what we expect. That's Julie Strain as the villain in Dallas Connection. And now we're seeing Day of the Warrior, where Julie K. Strain is doing this not to the same extent that Julie Strain's character did with the S&M in Dallas Connection, but still an element to that, and saying, like, yeah, what, this is the good guy now. This is the hero, who's doing this. I think you're right. I think with someone like a Julie K. Strain, she brought an edge to these films as well when she came on, and I think it was another great move that they made to keep her and have her be in there, for the essentially for the last three, because she did Dallas Connection and the two after.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and she's one of those actresses that started out, just playing strippers or arm candy, or just kind of, these like one little quick nude scene things. And, it's really a shame that more directors didn't pick up on her qualities and, try to bring her up. I mean, I think she was still in, a couple of Wynorski's later, like, I think Call Girl Wives, and I think was she in Hypnotica? I think that when she delivers dialogue, it's kind of, off as it may sound. I mean, that there's personality there. It's not being recited, and there's a real genuine presence there. And it's many of these actresses, there's only a window that they can kind of do these films in, and it's a shame that they weren't able to kind of have projects that would really kind of feature their best qualities.
Yeah, I agree with you there, because I think you're right. I mean, I think for whatever reason, these certain directors just seem to be able to work with these actors. I think there's a sense of, I think especially in the 80s, and it felt like it was starting to wane a little bit in the 90s, but there was a sense that if a woman did Playboy or Penthouse or something like that, well, that was it for her mainstream career. I think you kind of get Vanessa Williams sort of coming out of it when her music career starts, and then she did the Schwarzenegger movie, and then Pamela Anderson, I think, kind of started to kind of push away from that. Maybe even Tracy Lords with the porn background, and then she's starting to kind of get some kind of, I don't know, she didn't quite have the mainstream appeal that the other ones did, but it felt like in the 90s it was like, okay, Playboy is not the end of it, right? You can be in Playboy and still have a movie career in Hollywood if you wanted. But at this time it was like, oh, you're in Playboy, well, you can't expect to be in Hollywood. You can't expect to have an acting career. But here's Andy Sidaris saying, like, no, you can, if you're willing to keep taking off your clothes, I can give you parts that are, protagonists that are stronger. And I think Julie K. Smith is one that I think, we got to celebrate. I mean, I think, think of like women that could be in the Hall of Fame. She's another one, I think, when you look at her career and what she's done. I think, I guess it's one of those things where it's like, it's Hollywood's loss is our gain.
Yeah, and too, I mean, we'll always have the films. We can always go back and pick them apart. And, I know Julie Strain was taken from us far too soon. And, it's just, that kind of what could have been factor, you can't dwell on that. But, she left behind, like, a wealth of movies. I mean, I think that over 130 some credits on her IMDb. And, kind of the later movies were kind of like probably shot in somebody's backyard, and she might be only in one or two scenes, but she has never phoned it in a day in her life. I mean, every time you see her, she is always, just front and center, and just a real presence. And one of the few, I mean, she's my favorite actress, whether you want to use B actress, but I mean, just pound for pound, like, I would watch any movie just because she's in. And I've watched quite a few of them, and many of them are not very good. But the one thing that you can count on is that she will always deliver.
Yeah, and I mean, when you were on before and we were talking about altitude with Dolph, we talked about this idea of like, the moment Dolph in that movie walks onto the plane, it's like boom, there's Dolph. You know what I mean? Like the presence is just there. And I think of the same thing with Julie Strain. I think of, the in Fit to Kill, when she first comes into Fit to Kill, into this series of movies. But also too, when you're watching Dallas Connection, it's like, you're seeing all of these establishing shots that were, I think they were used in Picasso Trigger, right? I think that was where they initially came from, the shots of Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we're probably in a mansion in Dallas that's being made to seem like Paris. And, here's Julie Strain. She's got this scientist guy. He's like tied to the bedpost, and she's doing her dominatrix thing with him. And it's just immediate like energy from her that just makes and the whole scene just works. Like you said, the chocolates, they're to die for. We think, oh, maybe she's going to poison him with the chocolates, but no, the chocolates are okay. We think she's going to kill him while he's tied to the bedpost. Nope, she cuts him free. Just when we think everything's going to be okay with this guy, silencer shot to the head. Boom. That's it, between the eyes. And that's how she kills him. And it's just intense, and even like when her character gets into the back of the Mercedes and it's being driven to the airport, she's like, I'm going to take a nap. Like, even that is like, there's presence there where you're just like, her decision to take this scene on, or that, that it's almost like she's kind of letting us take a breather from her for a second, like she knows how much presence she has that, but it's even that we know she's there. I think Julie Strain's one of the few that male or female, that has that kind of Dolph Lundgren like presence, where the moment they walk into the scene, it everything's theirs.
Right, and the atmosphere, the mood changes. It's like, all eyes are on her, and what is she gonna do? Because it won't be long before, if there's a man wearing a tie, she's probably going to grab that guy by the tie and, kind of manhandle him. Or, if she's wearing a long trench coat, chances are that trench coat's going to drop and there's going to be not much on underneath. There's always kind of like that, and even in some of her lesser movies where she's just kind of, maybe filmed her part in a day as a favor to somebody, and they stick her in there as some sort, like she is like, boom, front and center. She has like just like, you can't take your eyes off her. One, she's gorgeous. The other, she's like 6'1", I think.
Yep.
I mean, she just had they really missed a bet by making her Wonder Woman, because I think she could have really nailed, if they were doing a DTV low budget Wonder Woman in the 90s, I think she would have nailed it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think of like the hair that she has in these movies too, like the long curly hair. I was thinking the same thing. And that's another thing, we talk about like, feminism in movies, and it's like, how long did it take to even get a Wonder Woman? I mean, we grew up, there's the Wonder Woman TV show it was in reruns in the 80s. I mean, it was sort of like a given that women, there were strong women in movies and TV. You had the Pam Grier films. You had, even shows like Cagney and Lacey that were female driven. Yet there was some idea that like, oh, well, we can't have a female driven comic book movie. And I think that's where someone like a Sidaris comes in and says, no, I mean, we could, Julie Strain can she can do this. I mean, I think, Cynthia Rothrock's another one that kind of had presence, but, Julie Strain's different because, like you said, she's 6'1". Cynthia Rothrock, just electric martial arts, but she's like 5 foot nothing. Julie Strain, it's like when she walks into those scenes, and I mean, she was never shy about wearing heels. She didn't care if she was another foot taller than the men she was acting opposite. And I think someone like a Sidaris or a Wynorski, they got it. They got it with her, and she got it. She got what these movies were about, and she made them so much better. And I think you're right. I think we, losing her soon. I mean, even though she passed away last year, I mean, with the fall that she had and the dementia, it's really a shame. But like you said, we've got 130 plus movies to enjoy.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, and very much, kind of like an empowering role model for anybody that, that that wants to kind of mold like a new style of Andy Sidaris movies for this generation. Take what really works from these movies, and you can, if you can find. I mean, she's a one in a billion, but if you can find somebody who can embrace that kind of presence and that just kind of Amazonian power, like I think the blueprint is there, and I don't know if people will be too shy to follow it in the future, but it would be nice, because I think together, Andy and Julie, they both kind of left a gaping hole in the late night market, and it definitely isn't what it used to be. But thank God, we have Tubi that keeps us going.
Well, that's what it is, right? Like, the cable channels now show reruns of, like, CSI or Law and Order overnight now. I don't know that TBS does movies anymore overnight. And so you need Tubi. We're fortunate that we can get these on Tubi because, you just turn off cable and just fire up your streaming device or whatever, and you watch these on Tubi, and you kind of get the same, you get kind of a similar effect. It's not quite the same, as it was back then, where we would flip through cable and find these, but you can at least still enjoy them. And I think Julie Strain, I think she has even some others beyond the Sidaris films. I know Battle Queen 2020 is on there, which I think it's actually an edited version though. So these Sidaris films are not edited on Tubi, so that's a good thing. But I think the Battle Queen was. I think it's like the love scenes would kind of start and then suddenly they were over. Kind of thing. So these don't really have any of that, which is important too.
And it's good that Mill Creek is putting them on Blu-ray now, kind of in increments, and it's good. It keeps physical media going as well, and collectors like us, we'll probably buy them, even though I know I'll probably pick them up at some point, even though I have the DVD. But it's just kind of continuing to keep the torch going, the 80s late night cable torch. And I think like I said, we're still talking about these movies 30 years later. So there are people out there that haven't seen them. They need to get on that. There's 12 of them, and they're all pretty fabulous.
Yeah, maybe that's the best place to leave it at, because I think the legacy. Sidaris passed away, in the 2000s, but Julie Strain, I think, with her passing, I think it was a reminder to me that I'm like woefully behind on covering her films on the site, but also the legacy that she left, as in the B movie realm, just in, like you said, just as an actress. I think I think you're right. I don't think we'll ever see another Julie Strain. And her films that she did in the Sidaris series, I think, are, for people that aren't familiar with her work, or that they're still, they're not sure who Julie Strain is, and they just found out that she passed, and they saw all the posts that people were doing about, in memoriam for her. I think these are a great place to start. I think Dallas Connection might be one of the best ones. She's the villain in that one, but I almost feel like that might be, one of my favorites of hers, just because of the way she is in that film.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great place to start. And like I said, it's that persona. It's like a one in a billion, kind of persona of just being that dominatrix, but like also having like that wild card flair. Like you never know what she's going to do next.
Yeah, and I think we just don't have enough of that nowadays. I think when, we go into, I've kind of complained that direct to video is just like in the 2010s in particular, it seemed like there was just not much happening, or really great. You certainly are never going to see a run like Sidaris had with these movies, where just every single one of them was good and fun and entertaining. You just never see that anymore. And I think now there's, I think maybe the big studios have gotten more involved in DTV, and they're sort of gotten their hooks into them a little bit more. I wonder if maybe even if another Sidaris came along, if they'd even be able to make these movies the way that he was able to, and if you could cast a Julie Strain the way he did, or the way Wynorski did, or Fred Olen Ray. So it's almost like these are sort of an archive for us that, fortunately they're all on Tubi, but we can kind of go back and kind of remember, when this stuff was really good.
Absolutely, man.
Excellent. Well, yeah. I mean, as we're wrapping up here, Mitch, and I think we talked about your books earlier, but where can people find you?
You can look for me on Twitter at the Video Vacuum, and then my blog is www.thevideovacuum.blogspot.com.
Excellent. Yeah, I think on your Twitter, I think actually talking about Julie Strain, I think somebody had posted something like, which actress would you want to be slapped by on screen? And I think you posted a picture of Julie Strain in response to that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me too, I can't think of. I mean, I think with Cynthia Rothrock it would be more like I'd want to be scorpion kicked by her on screen. So in that sense, if we're thinking about being slapped, I think Julie Strain was the number one. I think if you were gonna, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think we're never gonna see another Julie Strain, and it's just, it's a shame that she was taken too soon. But a lot of her stuff is available.
And if I got slapped by her, I'd probably ask for another.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on, Mitch. This was a really great conversation. I think when we talked about doing this one, I was really excited to kind of get in and talk about these. And these films are a lot of fun to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm envious that you watched them all in order, because they're fun to pick apart. Like I said, there are elements there that you can certainly discuss if you're looking for them, and I think that they're deeper than what lies on the surface.
Yeah, and for anybody out there, you may have turned us off by now if you didn't want to hear the spoilers. Though actually, now that I think about it, I don't think we did too many spoilers. I think really just talking about Julie K. Smith's character not being a bad guy in Dallas Connection. So actually, maybe I made that warning in haste. But anybody who's turned us off because of the spoilers is probably not going to hear me saying everything's on Tubi and you should go seek these out. But I think people that are looking for fun movies nowadays, they're not easy to find, I think. And these streaming services, it's hard to know when you see those thumbnails, like, what am I getting myself into for 90 minutes? Well, we can say for sure that if any of these, if you see Andy Sidaris directed and you see, whether it's Donna Spear or Julie Strain, that 90 minutes is going to be well used. You're not going to be wishing for your 90 minutes back.
Absolutely. I mean, they're all, just meat, potatoes, TNA, rock and roll, very, like I said, it's a comfort movie.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting every time. The quality is there. I wouldn't say it's fast food, because, but there is a prepackaged formula to them, and you just know what you're getting yourself into, and you don't have to worry if, did I choose a bad Andy Sidaris movie, because it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah, that's probably the best place to leave it, is that you're not going to be disappointed with any of these, and like you said, a bad Andy Sidaris movie doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you again, Mitch, for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
And until we meet again, that was the Direct to Video Connoisseur. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.